Hey guys, and welcome back to EQ Planes, and today I'll be doing an update of my 1:400 scale Toronto model airport. Definitely lots to show off in this airport update, considering I've expanded the airport a fair bit since my last Toronto update about 10 months ago, so yeah, I'll be plenty of new planes, and like I said, that large expansion towards the back of the airport. But without further ado, let's get into this. Starting out with this Emirates A380 we have coming in from Dubai. We'll definitely be getting a new livery, Emirates A380, when that is released by Gemini Jets, as I think that'd definitely be a nice addition to the airport updates instead of the special liveries each time. Next up, holding short of the runway, we have this Air Canada A220 wearing the TCA Retrojet special livery. Would definitely like to see more Retrojets from Air Canada. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but a Canadian Airlines livery in chevron colors would look amazing on the A220. And next up behind him, we have what I think is one of Toronto's coolest visitors these days, the Lufthansa 747-400 wearing the old livery here. Will definitely be interesting to see how much more longer the 747-400 has left at Lufthansa, but I have a feeling we'll stick around for at least the next couple years, as they have been painting some into the new livery. Speaking of the new livery, Lufthansa 747-400 would definitely like to pick myself up a model of Alpha Bravo Victor Mike, which was at the time the only new livery 747-400 and was the one that I got to fly back in October, but since two other 747-400s have been painted. And then next up here we have a United 737-800, which will be making the flight out to San Francisco today. Taxiing behind him, we have this Air Canada Rouge A321, which will be making a flight out to Orlando. And next up here we have an Air India 777-300ER, which will be making the flight out to New Delhi. Definitely be interesting to see how the new livery looks on the 300ERs when it's eventually painted onto them. I believe the first aircraft to receive the new livery is going to be the A350 near the end of the year, but I do know that they have some ex-Etihad Airlines 777-300ERs coming in, so maybe there's a chance they deliver one of those before the end of the year, and it would definitely be nice to see them put the new livery on that, as at this point it'd be kind of odd to paint it into the old livery considering the new livery's already been announced and ready to be debuted. And here we have a Westjet 787-9, which will be making the flight out to Calgary today. And here we have an Air Transat A330-200, which is being towed from a remote stand ahead of its flight to Paris. And back over to the other end of the airport, here we have a Flair 737 MAX 8, which will be making the flight out to JFK today. Now this is the Gemini Jets version of the Flair MAX 8, which is a bit better quality than the Aero Classics version I've been using in the past. Still do have the Aero Classics version, and both will definitely feature in some airport updates. But yeah, definitely like how the Gemini Jets version turned out. And here we have headed out to Cairo today in Egypt Air 787-9. And then next up here we have this Air Canada Express E175, which will be making a flight out to Minneapolis today. Now, one thing that might be kind of interesting to some of you about the Air Canada E175 is that now all the Air Canada E175s are in the new livery. Currently now I believe only the 767s, A321s, and E175s are completely in Air Canada's new livery, with the CRJ900s being pretty close, as I believe only one CRJ900 is currently left in the old livery. Taxiing behind him, we have this Air Canada 777-300ER, which will be headed out to Rome today. Here we have another Air Canada flight, which will be headed out to Italy, this time Venice, wearing the Special Star Alliance colors on the A330. And behind him, here we have an Icelandair 737 MAX 8, which will be headed out to Reykjavik. Next up here, we have another new model to the airport updates, and a much needed one at that, the Westjet 737-700, which will be headed out to Winnipeg today. And taxiing right behind him, we have this British Airways 787-8, which will be headed out to London Heathrow. Now, British Airways definitely likes to mix up the aircraft they use on this route. They see the 777s, the 787-9s, and I believe the A350s as well. And next up, here we have the Swoop 737-800, which will be headed out to Edmonton. Now, this is likely the last time Swoop will feature in one of my airport updates, as they are being dissolved towards the end of October. But yeah, so definitely sad to see them for the last time in these model airports. Overall, I'll definitely be excited to see some Westjet 737-800s in the new livery. And next up, here we have an American Eagle E175, which will be making the flight out to New York LaGuardia today. And next up here we have an Air Canada 737 MAX, which will be making a flight out to Halifax. And here we have the Air Transat A321neo, which will be headed transatlantic to Glasgow today. And here we have an Air Canada 787-9 headed out to Dublin today. And here we have one of Flair's two 737-800s, which will be headed out to Saskatoon. And starting out the cargo section, we have this WestJet Cargo 737-800, which will be headed out to Calgary today. Now, this is the registration of the WestJet Cargo 737-800 I got to walk around recently, which is definitely a really cool thing to have, and I will be receiving a much larger model of the Westjet Cargo 737-800, so definitely looking forward to receiving that, and there'll definitely be a video on that coming soon. Here we have another new model to the airport updates, this being the Air Canada Cargo 767. Now unfortunately this will be the last time I'll be able to use this particular one, as this Air Canada Cargo 767 wearing the rouge hybrid livery has now been painted over. It was painted over I think just a few weeks ago, and I think the other rouge 767 is currently being painted over now, so that'll leave all the 767s in the Air Canada cargo fleet in the new livery, as the toothpaste hybrid livery ones have been repainted now as well. But yeah, definitely hope that some model manufacturer releases a new livery Air Canada Cargo 767 so I can bring them back into the airport updates in the future. And right next to it we have this UPS 767, which will be headed out to Louisville. And then finally right next to it we have this FedEx MD-11, which has just come in from Memphis. And now here we still have sitting a Volga Nipper AN-124, which has been stranded in Toronto. This aircraft now has officially been repossessed by the Canadian government, so it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening to it. Currently it's still sitting in Toronto, however it could end up going to the Ukrainian as the entire airplane and leaving, or it could be left in Toronto and scrapped out for parts. Who knows, but it'll definitely be something I'll continue to follow. Next up, here we have an Air Canada A320 sitting at one of Air Canada's maintenance facilities, with an Air Canada A330 having some work done on it behind. And now next up, here we have the Air Canada Jets A319, which is just getting ready to be stripped of its Jets titles. The Air Canada Jets A319 has now officially been retired from Jets. However, the last Jets aircraft that was with them has now had its Jets titles removed and is now with Air Canada mainline. And then right beside the building here we have an Air Canada Rouge A319 and an Air Canada 777-200LR in the old livery. And then next up here we have a Porter Q400, which will be making a flight out to Montreal. Now typically you see Porter's Q400s at Billy Bishop, not Toronto Pearson, as Toronto Pearson is usually for the E2s. However, from time to time on some of these shorter routes like Ottawa and Montreal, you will see the Porter Q400s come into YYZ. And then here we have the Air Canada Express Q400, which will be headed out to North Bay. And here we have a new livery Air Canada Express CRJ200, which will be headed out to Cleveland. Right beside it here we have another Air Canada Express CRJ200, this time in the old livery, and this aircraft will be headed out to Pittsburgh today. Now definitely worth mentioning that the CRJ200s do seem to be slowly disappearing from the Air Canada fleet, as I believe they halved their fleet near the start of the year, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how much longer Air Canada sticks with the CRJ200s. And now here sitting at gate we have what is somewhat controversially one of my favorite liveries of all time, but the Condor A330-900 in the new livery. Now I will say that green is probably my least favorite color on the Condor new livery. However, I do like the different color variations, and I think the yellow looks especially good. And this aircraft will of course be going out to Frankfurt. And now here parked at gate we have an Air Canada Express CRJ900, which will be headed out to Washington Reagan today. Right beside him we have this Westjet 737-800, which will be making the flight out to Nashville. And next up here we have the Sunwing 737-800, which will be headed out to Cancun. Now it'll definitely be interesting to see how much longer the Sunwing branding stays around. I know that it will eventually be incorporated into Westjet. Not quite as soon as Swoop will be, but it's definitely coming around the corner. And right next to him we have another flight going to Cancun today, this time being an Air Transat A321CO in the Kids Club special livery. And right here we have a Air Canada A321 just getting loaded up to head out to Vancouver. And then next up, and finally, here we have the Westjet 737 MAX 8, which will be headed out to Montego Bay today. Anyways, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you guys back next time.